correct?
That's right.
Okay.
Okay, everyone, here we are, Truth Seeker's Path. Mark Taliano. We're talking to Mark, and Mark has written a book. He's been to Syria. He's a fellow truther, and he's got a path to talk about. So, hey, Mark, really glad that you joined us today. I know it's a little bit late there. It's only 1 o'clock here in New Zealand. What you're in? You're in the central time zone of the U.S.
I'm in Canada, Eastern Central. I think they call it that. Near Hamilton, not far from Toronto, not far from Niagara Falls.
Okay, well, welcome aboard. And this is about,
be here.
Yeah, thank you. This is about your story. So I guess let's talk a little bit about what you've done so far and get a sort of a top view, if you don't mind. You mentioned that you've been to Syria before, and you were even there during part of the war. Could you talk about that a little bit and go into other things that you've been involved with, the book and so on?
Okay, so the only times I've been to Syria were during the war. The first time was in 2016, and it was in Damascus, and at that time, terrorists that Canada and NATO and their allies support were mortaring people haphazardly in Damascus. And ultimately, they murdered about the terrorists that we support, primarily Al-Qaeda affiliates. They murdered about 11,000 people in Damascus, where I was, and including about 2,500 kids. Okay, and these are things that the mainstream media doesn't like to talk about because they support Al-Qaeda and all of the terrorists. As bizarre as that might sound, it's very true. It's very I mean, Western open sources have all admitted to this, so it's not a mystery. I mean, Dempsey, Clark, Biden, they all admit to it. Our allies fund these so-called Islamic terrorists, but they're not Islamic because Islam doesn't teach that. I talked to the Grand Mufti on the first visit there in 2016, and anyone basically who uses religion as disguises war with religion. I mean, that's not religious. They don't know God if they're doing that. God has got nothing to do with that. Okay, so I refer to these so-called Islamic terrorists as un-Islamic because they are un-Islamic. And well, you tell me, drug trafficking, sex slavery, kidnapping, organ harvesting. There's no Islam in that. There's no any religion in that. They're mercenary terrorists.
No, that's right, Mark. And just to back you up on that, we can just go ahead and let the public who doesn't know this already know. Truthers know that ISIS is fully supported by the U.S. These are foreign fighters predominantly, and they're brought in to wreck, do the troop movement on the ground, house to house, destroying lives, killing people, and soften the targets up to make a disrupted government, dysfunctional government, so that the resources are easier to steal, because when there's no one to defend the resources and no one functional government to negotiate the resources, then they're free. And that's what Dick Cheney started to do in Iraq. He got 40 billion officially. And if you think that's the real amount that he got, well, his company, Halliburton, got, no, it's much more, because it wasn't metered what they took. And this is all on record, all admitted, YouTube, admissions in all over the place. You just... Well,
I just wrote an article, and I don't know if you saw my most recent article, but it has, I think Prof. Tim Anderson, he wrote a book, Dirty War on Syria, excellent book. And I think his people came up with this video. I'm not sure, but it shows the all of these military figures, Biden, they all admit it, that, yeah, you know, those are our allies. Clinton. And there's, you know, like there's Hillary Clinton saying, yeah, well, we did this in Afghanistan. Yeah, okay, thanks for admitting it. You know it, I know it. Everyone knows it. Yeah. How come, I mean, it's not a secret. You guys funded Mujahideen in Afghanistan. They're the same type of mercenaries that were in Bosnia, Kosovo, Iraq. We sent ISIS into Iraq, into Syria. It's the same game. These are mercenary terrorists. They're expendable, But
and then all the people
if you give them enough money, they're going to do it, and we give them plenty of money. Our governments do.
Yeah,
and so does Saudi Arabia.
Right, and the people as well. Saudi Arabia emptied their jails, their death row.
Absolutely, okay, so yeah, it's and what these terrorists do is extraordinarily horrific when they occupy an area. Okay, for example, you will not find one single Christian church in any occupied area. Why is that? Because they destroy them. You will not find anyone admit to being a Christian in occupied areas. Why is that? Because they murder them. And so if you're Christian, you're going to be killed or you're going to flee. And that applies to Shia mosques. That applies to government supporters. They torture people. They put them in these tiny cells in the bottom of hospitals. They come up with these white helmets, do these dramatics, these theatrics. They fake these gas attacks. Why would Assad gas his own people when he's winning the war? It's the most elementary, rudimentary thing that a 10-year-old that is literate and doesn't watch TV could figure out.
Yeah,
it's a false flag. It's not a conspiracy theory. When I was there recently, the Duma false flag that we sent, so I wanted to go, but they sent someone, Pearson Sharp, to the site, and he interviewed maybe 30 people. Nothing happened, except for some cheap white helmets theatrics. Nobody died from that particular incident. But the terrorists are just, people do not want to stay in a terrorist-occupied area. It's horrific. It's just absolutely horrific. And they don't let kids go to school. They don't want educated people. Nobody wants that. They want kids to shoot other people.
Yeah.
So it's really is a nightmare for these Syrian people. It is a total nightmare.
Mark, we could talk for a long time, I'm sure, about the obvious nature of these wars with the gas attacks that are proven fake, the amount of witnesses that know what's going on the ground in all these different wars. Everyone who goes there says the same exact thing, and you've been there. Let's talk about some of your experiences, Mark, because I think that's fascinating for people. Okay, well, in 2016, as I said, I was there, and of course there's safety concerns. And the one night we heard loud banging noises, and it was frightening. And I asked the guy, and he said, well, someone from the outskirts of Damascus were firing in, so we were responding. Well, it was nice to know that the government was there to protect us. That was nice to know. And if you ask any Syrian, he or she will say the same thing. Okay, nobody wants to, but it's tragic because now I mentioned earlier to you that about 11,000 people in Damascus were murdered by these mortars, these hell cannon gas containers filled with nails and gas and explosives. But there were 2,500 kids roughly in Damascus murdered by those. But there's also maybe 30,000 people wounded or crippled. Now you've got these people. What North Americans don't understand is these people are just like you and me. They're very, very well educated. They're wonderful people, and they're getting their legs blown off, and they're just children. And it's a horrible, horrible thing. Knowing that our governments support this, our government said. Publicly, Assad has to go. This is how they do it. They do it with illegal sanctions. They impoverish the country, which creates economies of plunder and terrorism. It would happen to any country. The sanctions impact the people who are standing up for their country, the legitimate government. And the sanctions are not applied to the terrorists. The terrorists were shipping stolen oil, sending it right over to Turkey. They were making all sorts of money from this. They're mercenaries, they're foreigners, and so on. But when you see these people, and see, I wasn't there for that long. I was there in 2016, 2018 for about a week each time. And that's just a brief experience of what these people have to live through for years and years and years. Kids in terrorist-occupied areas don't get to go to school. But a lot of these people, they have to stay indoors for a lot of time because they don't know if mortars are going to come. Now, the most recent time I was there in April of this year,
I was woken up at about 4 in the morning by extraordinarily loud noises, and then we knew something was happening. It was French, UK, US sending cruise missiles in, and they as a response to this fake false flag.
Oh,
and
right.
it was super loud and super scary, and Syrians have to live through this all the time. And so the cruise missiles, maybe 100 some odd, I think about 70 or so were shot down, but one apparently landed near where I was, and it hit this area where they were doing research for cancer and so on, which is typical because the imperialists, with their proxies, they target schools, okay? They target pharmaceutical factories, okay? There's not a mistake here. They target book publishing companies where they make books for schools. They want to fully destroy. No mistakes here.
I've heard that from an American who, a British guy who lives there, and I heard that from a medical doctor, Syrian, who's on my LinkedIn network, who's in Syria now.
Yeah,
he lives there.
Yeah, these are not mistakes. No, there's no mistakes here. Tom Dugan, you probably may have spoken with him.
Yes, that's right.
Yes, so they target schools, they target hospitals, they target book publishing. We went to Aleppo on my most recent visit to an industrial park, okay? And, they target, did I mentioned pharmaceuticals. Like when we went into a store, it's all Syrian pharmaceuticals. They make their own pharmaceuticals. The transnational big pharma doesn't like that. Okay, so they do everything. They target these these domestic pharmaceutical plants. We went into East Aleppo, into an industrial park. Syrian banking facilities. Gee, why did they blow that up? We both know. They don't want the international financial institutions. They want to put their parasitical tentacles into Syria. They don't want Syria to be debt-free, which it is.
Yeah.
They don't want Syria to be self-sufficient, which it is. So they have these terrorists destroy all of the industry that they can destroy, that they can't steal. They steal as much as they can, and what they can't steal, they destroy. And immediately, that puts about 50,000 people out of work, which is exactly what the imperialists want. Because then you have more death and destruction. The 50,000 people is how many families? Okay, and these people have to make a living somehow, and the sanctions are killing them. So that it snowballs and becomes it adds to the chaos and economies of plunder and terrorism, and also in terrorist support areas. If the terrorists want you to work with them, and if you say no, they can just shoot your family, or they can shoot you.
Yeah. And
they do. And they can torture you. It's just horrifying. Some of these stories are just like, there's this, Eva Bartlett interviewed this lady, and she's saying how, the kids, they disappear. They steal kids, and they organ harvesting. It's beyond horrible.
Beyond belief. Mark, we're in the middle of a very serious problem on Earth, and it's ruled by some very dark forces that are unbelievable, and you and I only know a part of it.
Yeah.
Our eyes, our senses, our reading ability, our time, it's only a small sliver.
Yeah.
I have had problems with being upset about this, and I can't really do too much about it. What I'm trying to do is a little bit of something, and I'm trying to be a little bit positive at the same time, and I'm also trying to live my life at the same time. How do you grapple with your passions and at the same time maintain a balance in your life so that your family is there, your work is running smooth and all that sort of thing? Is there a secret or I mean, I'm trying to, I guess, switch here a little bit because we don't have too much time. I want to get a bigger picture. I know we could go on and on about the horrible things in Syria. It get really just hours, just from our top of our memories. But
there is no secret that I'm aware of. Once you experience and have been there and see how these people are being destroyed by our governments, it has a direct impact. And then I come home and people just don't understand, and you can't even talk to them about it because of the indoctrination, and it does get depressing sometimes. And sometimes I do get depressed over it because it's hard. I wrote a book about it. I write articles about it, but I find it's very difficult to talk to people about it because we're just not on the same page.
Yeah,
and so it gets depressing. Now I don't live a normal life. I'm just researching now. I don't have a boss right now. To be honest with you, after what I've seen and what I know, I don't know how employable I'd be anyways. Just because this crisis, which is engulfing the whole world, is passing under the radar. Just so many people are unaware of what's going on. We have this globalized war, globalized poverty. The war machine is eating up all our tax dollars for this transnational oligarch class, so that it can destroy innocent people overseas. And these are beautiful people. Look what they're doing to Yemen right now. So to be honest, I have a real hard time finding balance now, having seen this and knowing what I know. And it's upsetting that people are so thoroughly indoctrinated. I'll give you an example. In Syria, we went to Malula, for example. The terrorists that we support, as we talked about this earlier, they slaughter Christians. It's really horrible. So I went to Malula on the first visit, and I talked to this dentist, and he's saying, "Well, do you think they'll come back?" And I'm trying to be optimistic, yeah, but he doesn't think so. And I write to the local church around the corner from me, and they have a copy of my book, and I get no response from them. And so I'm asking myself about our own institutions, about our own church. How can we call ourselves Christian when fellow Christians in Syria are being slaughtered by terrorists that we support? I have a real hard time with that.
I have one answer for you, at least in the U.S., Mark. Unfortunately, it's 501c3. That's what it is. It's a tax-free status in the U.S. Maybe Canada has a similar. The churches are forbidden, basically blocked from getting political in any way. You cross the government, you're now no longer tax-free.
And these are churches where we practice Christianity. I'm sorry, but there's a real disconnect between the two, isn't there?
Absolutely.
A total disconnect. I mean, how can you call yourself a Christian if you can't help the Christians in Syria who are being slaughtered by terrorists that our government support? That's just one of those ridiculous disconnects.
Yeah. Mark, how can we help you, and how can we help other truthers out there in a similar situation as what you are? For me, what works is getting my hands dirty, planting something, thinking of the future, permaculture. There's a whole revolution under another different kind of, I guess this is a time of revolutions, isn't it? It's a time of technology change, of interaction. The wake up is happening, although not as fast enough in certain areas, and not certainly reaching far enough into the US. New Zealand is more awake. I'm in America. You can hear my accent. I live in New Zealand. I'm a citizen here. I have no problem talking with 90% of the people about this if it's the right time. Yeah, it's no problem. People understand. Yes. People
and I think.
Yeah.
Sorry, I think in Germany there's more acceptance too. This book is in German, in Germany as well, in German, and it sells well there. They seem to be more receptive to this. But my personal experience in North America is that the indoctrination is really thick. And I know other people, Vanessa Beeley, Eva Bartlett, Tim Anderson in Australia. Okay, Tim wrote this. Do you know Tim? Okay, Prof. Tim Anderson. They've basically blacked him out in Australia. They don't want to hear his message. And so maybe New Zealand's a bit different. But in Australia, they've he doesn't get much of a platform.
I should clarify. No, we have the same media. We have the same platform. We have the same similar politics. It's a little bit lighter, perhaps. And the same garbage that comes through the media for the most part. But the general population is not dead asleep, and they are open to ideas, and it's a small country, so everyone's looking out.
Well, that's a good thing. That's a good thing, because I'm hearing stories. Well, if you follow Eva Bartlett and Vanessa Beeley, they go to this church where to talk, to expand the discussion, to talk about what's happening. Both of them have spent a lot of time in Syria.
Yeah.
Vanessa Billy did some really groundbreaking work with Al Qaeda helmets, white helmets.
Oh, beautiful work.
And some organized, opposition figures throw stink bombs into the church. I mean, I went to a rally years ago, and there's organized anti-Syrian government people, and they were very well paid. The posters were awesome, and they were professionally done. It was all this white helmets theatrics, and our media would cover them, but they wouldn't give us 1 second of time. They wouldn't give us 1 second. We were there peacefully spreading information with the Hamilton Coalition to stop the war, and the media did not want to talk to us. So I think that North America right now is a more closed society than Europe. I'm surprised you said that about New Zealand, though, because Prof. Anderson, apparently they're not very receptive to the truth.
On his level, I believe whatever he says is going to be the truth. All I'm saying is on my truth here locally in Nelson, which is a town of 50,000 in the surrounding area, anyone I walk up to, general society, I'm not talking about the media. I wouldn't even try to talk to the media if it's big media.
Right. Well, that's a positive sign then. And then we have to translate that into some type of action so that our politicians at least are aware of the truth. I don't know if they're aware of the truth. And then that can impact the policymakers who are not the politicians, from what I can see. And maybe we can have some impact, but I mean, the costs of this are enormous. I believe we've lost democracy over this. People are just oblivious to what is happening in foreign policy, including what's happening in Ukraine.
Yeah.
Supporting illegal junta government, neo-Nazi infested. I mean, these are things that Canadians typically don't support. They typically don't want to support Al-Qaeda or neo-Nazis or ISIS, but they do because our government does.
Yeah, because the government
not aware of it.
Yeah.
So here we have a huge disconnect between the policymakers, the politicians, and the public. So not only are we creating global war and poverty and an overseas Holocaust right now, if you look especially in Yemen, but throughout the Middle East as well, it's literally Gideon Polya does these figures. We're talking about a Holocaust. How many people have died in Syria alone because of this war, which exists only because of the West?
I don't know.
I think 500,000. I can get the figures. I don't have them right here, but maybe 500,000. How many people are dying in Yemen because of this predatory imperialism? They're starving to death.
And people don't even know about Yemen.
No. And
in Canada, these are sovereign nations. These are people that are, there's value there. Why are all these ruins getting ruined? Why are all the museums getting destroyed along with this? And the ability.
Why?
Yeah, I know why. That want to eliminate history and make people have no pride in who they are, not knowing their history, so they don't stand up.
Not knowing who they are.
Yeah, not knowing who they are. That's right.
They did that in Iraq too. Some of the first targets, destroy the museums.
Yeah, Afghanistan as well.
They went to Palmyra, they destroy this. They steal the artifacts as a black market to sell it. They want to destroy countries, make it a blank slate so they can just put a puppet Wahhabi terrorist government in that they can control.
And here's
transnational.
Here's a historical reference for exactly that kind of operation: the American Indian.
Yes.
Totally wiped out with every bit of history gone and on reservations. Yeah.
This has been happening for so long. It's a continuum, and it's still happening. But we think we're civilized.
No.
The Syrians are civilized.
We're the machine that runs the people that destroy people. As soon as we fail to be the machine, we become the next target.
It's happening to us as well. The Parenti calls it the third worldization. You look at the U.S., it's the highest incarceration rate in the world. Our taxes, I mean, the deficit from all this war spending is absolutely atrocious. So we can't spend on schools and hospitals. There's an extraordinarily high rate of avoidable deaths. Much of North America has been third worldized. I love that term. Actually, that's a Chassidowski term. With these privatized tentacles just pulling profits and destroying infrastructures. So we don't have universal health care anymore. We don't have universal education anymore. You have to have money now to go to university, like considerable money. And interestingly enough, the countries that they target, for example, Syria, free healthcare, free education.
Right.
Transnationals are, they want to get into it.
Absolutely. Libya was 100% the same in that respect.
Exactly. Yeah. Totally. Highest standard of living. Yeah. And they totally destroyed Libya and made it into a cesspool for terrorism, for open market slavery. It's just...
Mark, they don't want awareness. Let's be aware. They don't want us to share the truth. Let's share the truth. They don't want us to be sovereign and separate from their system. Let's be sovereign and separate from their system. They want us to be in debt and in fear. Let's be not in debt and let's not be in fear.
Yes,
and let's form our own groups. Yeah, the resistance is an idea. We don't need a plan. We can be a diverse set of people without a plan, because planners and leaders can be targeted. But if you just have a concept, I'm going to be free. I'm not going to be a slave. I'm not going to participate in this system. Mark, tell us about your book. Yeah, I'm out of time. Well, I can stay on if you pull me to, but I promised to give this a half an hour shot. We're out. But can you please plug your book and let's?
Yeah, I can tell you briefly about the book. It talks about how, like, the horrific things that terrorists do. They cut off water supplies. Everything and anything that the NATO people are doing is totally illegal. These are, when I was there and the cruise missiles came in, those are supreme international war crimes. I don't see this on the television banner, supreme international war crimes last night. That's what it was. And in this book here, we have not only primary source documentation, but we have the words from Syrians themselves, what is really happening, and the terrible situation that they are in exclusively because of Western actions. And it debunks any silly notion that any of this is a mistake. These are not mistakes. Remember when Madeleine Albright said we thought it was worth it? Yeah. Over 500,000 children under 5 killed by illegal or by sanctions. Yeah, none of these are mistakes, my friends. People think, or people will say, well, come on, they destroyed the industrial base in Syria. That must be a mistake. No. All this is well planned. So the book is just truthful. It talks. It's primary source information, and it's the voice of the people. And so, I mean,
thank you for doing that. Let's show up the book just close to the camera so people can see it.
Oh, okay. There it is.
Voices from Syria. Beautiful picture. Mark Taliano. So there it is, folks. I'll have a link to that, and there's probably some reviews and anything come to mind about, let's say, so it's primary research. You've got you've gone on the ground. You've interviewed people.
Yeah. See, the media that we're listening to, and again, people just they don't accept this, but the media that we're listening to comes from the terrorists exclusively, okay, from terrorist-controlled areas. They have their own media centers. They have the white helmets, which are Al-Qaeda. This is a truthful book. It deals with the context. It deals and highlights how public relations industries are used to present false narratives. It shows the theatrics involved and all the illegal tricks that are used to deceive the public. Okay, so I mean, the amount of money that Washington spends lying to us is just phenomenal. But we see all the weapons. I mean, the weapons and the admissions, it's all there. And every time an area is liberated, a terrorist occupied area, the proof is all there. oh, look at this hospital. We have Daesh here, we have ISIS here, we have Al Qaeda, and we have FSA here, and we have their. Oh, look, we have poison gas facilities here. It's all there. Every time an area is liberated, the truth emerges, point blank.
What's interesting, those liberated areas, suddenly they've got women coming out without their burqas on. There's no more black ISIS flags anywhere. You know, this is supposedly the rebels. They call them rebels. Notice all these Orwellian terms given to groups based on what the agenda is supposed to be pushed onto the general public. General public, unfortunately, how did it happen that we run wars based on the opinions of people that just look at headlines?
Well, policymakers are running these wars with full knowledge, I believe, of what they're doing. It for sure. The military policymakers, they know exactly what they're doing, but it's a big secret to everyone else, because if the broad-based population knew what you know and what I know, they would never get away with this, because it's inhuman and it's impoverishing you and me. Yeah. And the rest of the world, except for the 1% oligarch class. So if the truth came out and was accepted by a broad-based population, they would never get away with this.
Well, I would say it's impoverishing even those who do it, because they're lost their soul, their meaning of life. You get there's a lot of quotes about that. You can get the whole world, and what is it worth if you don't have yourself?
Nothing.
You know, this sort of thing. They're gone. They're hollow shells.
Yes, hollow men. Absolutely, hollow shells. That's exactly it. Yeah. So if we can get this message out, I mean, some people, okay, if they feel, I don't want to know the truth because they don't have to act upon it. Well, if you know the truth, then you're doing yourself a favor, because these policymakers are destroying us. They're destroying all of us. So if we can raise awareness and consciousness, that's what we need to try to do. But it does get depressing, because easier said than done.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Mark. How can we find your book?
If you go to Global Research, I'm a research associate there, then you'll see it. Thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you, Mark. Take care.
Bye-bye.